You know what? This was one of those movies where I could never really remember the title of the movie. You knew about it, but you couldn't really find it anywhere. All I ever remembered was those jars that Derry B made. They looked amazing. I wanted a jar. Can Derry B make me a jar?
I can't stay.
Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tyra here with another struggle review, here to discuss Funny Valentine. Now this movie is from 1999 and it stars Alfre, Woodard and Loretta Devine. Now before we get into all things down home country living and church secrets, I need you guys to drop down and subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that, then we're going to come back and discuss. You know, outside of those jars, there was one other thing I remembered about this film. Just how I felt the first time I saw Joyce May's oldest daughter and how annoying and aggy I felt like she was. You know, them old teenage, you just want to punch them in the face? Yeah, I wanted to punch her in the face.
Go back.
Now that you guys have hopefully subscribed to see more of me, let's get into this movie. But before we jump into the film, I have to give a shout out to the person who paid for it and requested it. So if you happen to get triggered and, you know, want to relive and heal from some family trauma, it's not because of me. It's because of this person right here. Thank you so much for supporting me and paying for this content. Now, this movie was based on a short by playwright and author Joan Cooper, and it was also directed by Julie Dash, who is mostly known for directing as well as writing Daughters of the Dust, which I also reviewed early on starting my channel. So if you have a moment, please go and check that video out. Getting into this one, when I tell you it is so hard to find this film, I will leave the link below. This movie is at the moment available on YouTube, but it's not the best quality. You can't really find it of quality anywhere, and that's all the way down to the photo imagery. Now this movie was produced by Stars Network. Even though I most often saw it on BET, it was briefly released way back when in the theaters and later was presented on cable TV. And theatrical release or not, this does feels like your typical everyday made for TV late 90s, early 2000 movies. You know, the What About Your Friends, Love Song, Holiday Heart, divas from 1995 that I cannot find anywhere to save my life. We have smaller budgets, great storylines, beloved actors, sometimes B actors, and they often get forgotten, never get a digital release, and would downright turn to dust if it wasn't for platforms like YouTube. This movie and its story is really simplistic, but it resonates and it sticks with you. And it's also the second collaboration that we do get with Alfre Woodard and Loretta Devine. Years prior, they starred in Down in the Delta together. Now we are introduced to Joyce May, who is unhappily married with 2 kids. She's wealthy and far removed from her down south roots. No longer in that small town, but Joyce couldn't be more down. Married to a husband that doesn't care to notice her, so complacent in his role as the breadwinner for the family that he is comfortable enough to drip and cheat on her. No longer wanting to tolerate this and in desperate need for enlightenment, we take our 2 girls and embark on a trip back home to fresh air, porch swings, starry nights, and love. Most importantly, her cousin, Derry B, who has never left. Now, I love the way that Loretta Devine portrays Derry B. So often she is relegated to the mother. And you know, we love Jennifer Lewis, Loretta Devine. We love them as our Hollywood mothers, but the opportunities that they get to kind of play against type and remind you that I am a great, capable actor. It's just not always about me portraying somebody's mother. I really appreciate those roles, and this is one of those. Derry B is mentally disabled, And in the wrong hands, this role could have come off really offensive, but the way that Loretta portrays her here is just something so sweet and endearing about her character. Now, Derry B is a staple in her community, not only for her joyous spirit and personality, but for the fresh farm produce and vegetable jars that she makes by hand, markets and sells them for practically nothing, which we are going to get into because no. But Derry believes that every season, has a smell, a flavor, a texture, a color. It is just absolutely beautiful. A life of repetition, simplicity, and happiness, even though Derry B is mentally disabled. Now, it is not directly specified in the movie, but you do see that intellectually she is delayed, often expressing herself or digesting information in a manner that a young child would. But with a character like Derry B, you see that is the least of her worries. It doesn't define who she is. It actually leaves her open, capable, and smarter in areas that most people without disability wouldn't comprehend and often come up short. Now, with Joyce May taking this grand stance and trip with hopes that her husband just might notice her, we also bring two daughters. One being our youngest, who is sweet, curious to explore country life, and even more curious about the connection that Derry B has with her mother since childhood. We're kind and we are extremely respectful. And then we have Lauren, who's annoying, disrespectful, and selfish, blaming the shortcomings that is presented to the family by her father on her mother, who she refers to by her first name. She is a brat personified. A daddy's girl who feels like if there just happens to be anything wrong with our family dynamic, it must be your fault. What did you do to my daddy? And when I told y'all I wanted to push Lauren, I wanted to push her so bad. Granted, watching this now as an adult, I have a better understanding of her, but to see her complain on that trip the entire time, refer to Derry B, where my daddy said that Derry B is a I understand her now, as you know, not only that privileged daddy's girl, Summers and Martha Vineyard's girl, prep school girl, but we are also to display how far removed Joyce May is from her roots. Having to witness her go through tantrums, push things down on the table, bratantly call her daddy and let them know her whereabouts as if she is being kidnapped. Being the oldest, but having zero understanding for the emotional state of her own mother to even fathom why this trip is necessary. Just how is this trip going to affect me? Why am I even entertaining you? My daddy is the one who supplies us with this living, with this wealth. What exactly do you do? Absolutely nothing at this moment. It wasn't until watching this film now that I realized just how much weight that Joyce began to place in, the value that her husband brings to the table, even though he was emotionally unavailable to her. Through the years, Joyce May has completely lost who she ever was, which is why our daughter Lauren could even talk to us in that way. You really get a great contrast here of Joyce May's current life versus Derry B's, who never left their hometown, and how it could have benefited the both of them to take a little bit from each other and not just throw away the rest, selling them damn jars for 75 cents. Child, they was taking advantage of my girl. 75 cents? Now, Joyce May, remembering the summer spent in town, by the lakes, going to church, going to the fairs, spending time with Derry B, cutting out hearts and exchanging them with each other. And even though Derry B may be years older than her little cousin Joyce and even physically developed, due to her disability, they are kindred cousins who share the same interests, from hopscotch to jump ropes to baby dolls. Even down to this secret clubhouse that they share and stash their most treasured possessions, their hearts, these keepsakes and memorabilia of things that are just important to them. Those scenes are so sweet and innocent to me. I love it because it's this, well, we don't get it now, child, but it's kind of a throwback to this innocence as a little girl that you can only possess at a certain time in your life, really about the ages of 5 to 12, before you hit puberty and so many other things become oh so important. I really miss the innocence of those times of just being being simply a girl, a little girl at that. It is just a time that we often take for granted, and it really displays here strongly in this movie once that innocence is snatched away from not only Derry B, but Joyce as well. Now, also in the past, we get mirrored behavior with Joyce May's mother and Derry B's mother with what they kind of decided to do later on in life, with Joyce May's mother deciding to go on, leave the small town behind, move up north to the city for not only education, but maybe wealthier opportunities. And then you have CCH Pounder, Ebenezer Baptist Church, who has opted to not only stay there, but takes pride in it. Ethel B is often judgmental of Gail, feeling like she is leaving behind who she truly is and is maybe trying to be a little bit more than what she is. Real judgmental, real churchy, if you don't mind me saying. All, on that usher's board, child, that finger, that usher with that finger and them crispy Walt Disney ass gloves, holding that door like, girl, I'll break my motherfucking back before I let you come in this church. Like, oh Lord. Takes her job and her walk with the Lord and supporting the church very, very seriously. Believing, like most people who are heavily involved in church, especially with this being a small town, this offers a sense of safety and security that a big city could never do. This community here, we are okay and blessed here. But the pastor's child, the PK, it's always the PK children, Troy has other things on his mind. I wanted to spend a moment on Ethel B and correlation with Derry B and how she turned out. I never really paid attention to the fact that Gail, even though we find out more about their dynamic later, when Gail is trying to present the idea to take Derry B up north, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing, but maybe help her with her condition, specialists who can help her progress into having a higher mental capacity instead of her kind of staying here in this safe bubble and being stifled. Of course, she shoots this down with the quickness as if I'm her mother, I know what's best. And we, unlike yourself, are not going to forget where we came from. Like, Lord, stifled her in the worst way. The fact that we see that Derry is mentally capable of a whole lot more if she just has some assistance early on in her life. But to watch her mother in this movie just kind of shoot down ideas in kind of a spiteful way and never consider the ramifications of, what's going to happen to Derry when I'm no longer here. Even though with her character, it is presented to us in more of a lighthearted nature of her enjoying more of the simplistic things that life has to offer. So why would she ever need to leave the small town when in fact, she really mentally couldn't, because who's to say that she would survive outside of it when her mother never took the time to prepare her to do so. I believe that's why we see so often in the movie that Derry, even in her older age, is very resistant to change. She always wants things to stay the same. And I know with her mental state, that could be a thing, that repetition, but I do think that her mother and the state that she kind of left her in contributed to this also, which leaves her more vulnerable to being taken advantage of. Now, unlike Thomas Holder and the other boys who naturally have crushes on the girls respectfully, Troy Watts, our local PK kid, already perceived in his community as problematic, but is upheld in it secretly by his first lady mother and his pastor father due to wanting to keep up that Christian image. Now, in the way that Troy Watts antagonizes Derry B, you could see that this is an ongoing thing and that she has been targeted by him for quite some time, taking the busyness of the town fair as an opportunity to follow Derry B as well as little Joyce to destroy their clubhouse, disrespect them, as well as assault Derry B. As a very helpless Joyce looks on and shouts, but isn't quite capable of helping her cousin. Now, time and time again, the scene is very, very heartbreaking. Even though it's not, extremely graphic, we don't linger in it very long. Once we get into things like not only the fear that is taking precedent with Derry B as well as Joyce when the incident occurs, but just him invading such a sacred space as well as something as sacred as Derry B's body. Beforehand, they don't have a care in the world. They are just so happy to be with one another, and they are just so innocent and are expecting the world outside to be the same way. And to find out that it isn't, shatters their innocence as children, and it also affects them well into their adulthood. To watch him, rip her clothes, refer to her as stupid. The thing that sticks with me a whole lot is when he opens her blouse and says, you act stupid, you act like a little girl, but you ain't no little girl. Like, that made me think of situations that highlight the way that a lot of young Black girls are perceived. You may look like a little girl, but you are not built like one. Perceived as physically well endowed, curvy at a young age, decreases your self-worth to some people. Whether you are dressed revealingly or modestly, it is a green light for some to treat you differently and sexualize you, often giving advances that you are mentally unprepared for because you are busy minding your business, being the little girl that you are. It seems like she was ready to me. She looks ready to me. Ain't nobody worried about your sick ass. Things like that are right up there with asking a victim, well, what were you wearing? What were you doing when the incident took place? Or telling young girls not to be fast. You act fast, you're going to be inviting, why are you being fast? Oh, God. Now, returning back home with her two girls is not just strictly beneficial for Joyce, who remembers who she is, lets her hair down, gets a little comfort food, some fresh air, gaining a closeness to who she was prior to her husband and prior to her daughters, even rekindling long lost love with now Dr. Thomas Holder, who thinks the world of her child. I would have been all over that man. I would have been all over, she was trying to be faithful, still, contemplating things with her little cheating ass husband. Like, how you doing, town doctor? What's good? Let's dip out. But, Joyce was trying to be, righteous and honor her marriage, even though her own husband wasn't. I love the fact that her daughter gave the whole plan away. We are headed here, Dad. Could you come and pick us up? We need you here now. High key, your family as well as your marriage is falling apart. Did he rush there? Did he try to salvage anything? Absolutely not. Child, a good doctor wouldn't have to give me that waiting to exhale. Michael, he could have gave me that speech one time. I can give you everything you want, everything you need. If you just let me, girl, come on. Bye. Now, this trip is not only benefiting Joyce, but it is benefiting Derry B as well, who is losing her way. We do find out that her father passed early on, and now that her mother is dealing with old age as well as sickness, it is just a matter of time before Derry is left all alone, not knowing anything but her mother, not being prepared at all. Who am I if she is not here? Granted, if Derry B would have gotten a little bit more assistance, some help, she could have maybe not have gotten to the age that she was and have to have the local teenage boy help her read the paper every morning or really truly know the value of $1. Even though she states multiple times, I can foods because I love them. Derry B is the embodiment of not placing value in money. She finds value in the simple things that God as well as the earth has to offer her. I don't think I like money very much if it's going to take you away from me. She has had this mentality all of her life. But at the same time, we are selling these canned foods for 75 cents a pop. Our, little local neighborhood white woman who owns the bakery, she is selling them for $3. Derry B doesn't really have a lot of discernment when it comes to anyone trying to take advantage of her because she was never taught to do so. Feeling like she was safe in the sanctity of this town, everybody's my friend. Meanwhile, you have Joyce May trying to do what she thinks adds value to life, especially with this down south living. So many things are accessible to us, Derry B. Let's get, this new machine, this new TV, this new couch, this new dress. Things I can afford that could make life easier. Yeah, you have new things aplenty and you're not even happy. You see in so many ways how they could have taken and learned from each other long ago, made life a whole lot easier, but we have opted not to due to our mother Brenda as well as our mother Ethel B, whose decisions affected our outlook on life, even though they happened so long ago. Like the fact that Derry B still sees this town as a sanctity of safety, even though it was never that, starting from 1969 after her assault. With the First Lady as well as the pastor pleading with Ethel B to not press any charges. Think of the church, think of the community, think of all that we have accomplished that will be torn down if you reported my son and what he did to your daughter. Promising Ethel B that she, as well as Derry, would never have to see her son's face again. Everything she placed value in, every so-called Christian there preferred to hold up this image rather than do the right thing. Now, of course, she, tears off the usher's board badge and, vows to leave that where it is. I just want to act like this never happened. Even though we did that, we still complied with what the church wanted in the first place, doing a disservice to Derry B by not reporting the incident, as well as leaving some other girl accessible for him to maybe do the same thing to her. Now, when we find out that Brenda was actually Derry B's mother, just at the time she was maybe too young and not in the best place to take care of her, so in secret we passed her along to Ethel B to raise her as her own. I feel like this is why Ethel B behaved towards Brenda in the manner that she did, especially with Brenda wanting to be that force of, we should report this, we should do something about it. Why are we complying with anything? He needs to be charged. For the same reason that she didn't want her to take Derry B up north for a better education. Anything, any moment of you having any say-so in her life diminishes who I am in my eyes as her mother. I'm the only mother. I get to say so. I make the choices. You gave up yours. Let me do this. It was, a way to not admit that guilt that maybe both of them felt for lying to the girls for so long, and a way for Ethel B to really feel like she has that dominance over Derry B's life as a mother. This is my daughter and it's not yours, even if she didn't come from me. And probably cater to that resentment that she felt for Brenda in the first place. You have gone on, built up your life, bettered yourself, found wealth, have another child, but you never came back for Derry B. And now you want to come along and make all of these decisions. And who's to say if you did come back, me being her mother for as long as I have been, I would be open to it. Clearly, she wasn't. But due to this resentment that she has, we leave Derry B accessible to be confronted and harmed by past events. I love the moment where we never really low-key had a full circle with Joyce and her little Aggie ass daughter who was getting on my nerves. She spent a lot of her time in this movie complaining as well as hanging out with a boy that is living by, but consumed in herself per usual. When her younger sister is bit by a snake and they rush to that hospital, you have Derry having that flashback, and it's just like, this could have been much worse. She could have been affected by something much more powerful than just an incident with a snake. I'm so glad that this time isn't one of those times. Joyce wanting to liven up the place, buying a couch. It just happens to be from a furniture store owned by Troy's parents, who for some time has still lived there and was able to come back and often antagonize Derry B. Even though he isn't physically in her face at first, child, he looked like a whole witch. It just looked some hocus pocus shit, sucking the lives out of little children. Just a little disturbing human being. Even though he isn't in her face with it at first, the fear that she has of always taking the long way around in her truck to make her deliveries because she just doesn't want to see him, cross paths with him, he has continued to affect her life. Instilling fear because he never really faced any penalties for what he did to her. So by the time we get to, I don't like what you've been saying to me, to my mother, upsetting my mother, sir, get away from me. By the time Joyce tries to return this couch and he takes it as a personal hit to try to now get in Derry B's face, threaten her, scare her, get under her skin, taking pride in the fact that he still affects her in that way. Just as Derry is gaining the capacity to know that even though my mother is no longer here and she's passed away, I'm gonna be okay. You know, maybe it's okay for me to entertain a man. Maybe I can date, you know, dress up, have a good time, have a stronger sense of independence. He comes along and snatches that away. With neither one of these ladies wanting to live in the shadow of what affected them and who they are now, they both come full circle in their lives and decide to change at the very same time. Now, even though I thought Joyce could have got her back blown out, she don't even know. She does not know, even though we could have went there. We do have her have a moment with her husband when he finally decides to roll up on her, and they kind of have a come to Jesus about maybe Joyce suppressing who she truly was to accommodate who he was, and also him, you know, having a wandering eye and cheating on her. We kind of end off with her maybe considering her husband still as an option. Child, man. We also have Lauren acknowledge that, you know, maybe my dad isn't all that I think that he is. And Joyce also finding Derry B's birth certificate. Notice these people were going to take these things to their graves. If Joyce had not rolled up on that birth certificate, nobody wouldn't have been the wiser. Brenda was dead. Ethel B was dead. We just have transparent things of her stating, you know, take care of your big sister. Like, really? Like, the family secrets that they be taking, like, go to hell. Go to the bottomless pits with that. But she does come to terms with the fact that, you know what, it doesn't really matter. Based off of how I feel and what has always been in Derry B's heart, based off of what she says, we really don't need a piece of paper to tell us what we already feel and what we already know. She has always been my sister. Even though I took it with a grain of salt that mentally Derry B never really knew the truth. Like, she had the capacity to do a whole lot more than her mother ever prepared her for. Anywho, we see that in the best way when Derry B decides she's not gonna take it anymore. Wanting that goddamn couch out of her yard yet again, we have Joyce once again displaying a different type of energy, standing up to the likes of Troy. But Derry B gives a whole other energy once Troy decides to approach and touch Joyce's oldest daughter. Finally approaching him, sticking up for herself, calling him godless. You know, you like a dog gnawing on a bone, ain't got no teeth. Like, mentally all there. She could have been yonders beyond where she was if it wasn't for her mother holding her back. The lies, like, well, we could have got there. But to see her just gather him in the best way, of course, the community is backing her up. Like, this is good for you. You no longer have to walk around on eggshells in a place that you call home, regardless of who's here. I let you hurt me then. You will never hurt me again, as well as anybody in connection with me. Come near me or my family, you will absolutely regret it. Taking back her power in the best way possible, even getting up the courage to no longer have to take the long way around. I can pass up his store. I can even revisit our still sacred clubhouse that is still a good place. Like, releasing all of their hearts, just beautiful. I really wish that this movie could get remastered and re-released. It deserves to be seen a whole lot more. I really enjoyed my time with it and what I learned from it now versus, you know, me watching it as a kid. There is still a place for movies like Funny Valentine. Well, you guys, that was my review for Funny Valentine. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop down and tell me if you did. Have you ever seen this movie? If so, when is the last time that you've seen it? Is this your, introduction to it? Did you roll up on the YouTube link to go and watch it? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please hit that like button. I will definitely see you guys for my next review. Bye.
Commissioner!